After spending 100 hours playing the Arknights Endfield beta, I made countless mistakes so I could learn the ins and outs of the game so you don't have to. Today, we'll cover what you need to know in order to get started in Arknights Endfield, so you don't end up falling behind. The launch of the game is the most important time to set yourself up for the future, so let's get you started with a smooth experience. The very first thing we'll do is break down the combat. Characters in this game have 4 skills: basic attacks, battle skills, combo skills, and ultimates. Basic attacks are much like their name implies, pretty basic. Just hold your left click and you'll end up doing your basic attack string. But with that said, there are important things to note about the basic attack. Specifically, the last attack in your string. It's referred to in the game as the final strike. This final strike can proc many things, such as Perlica's combo skill or Levitane's passive. Battle skills are strong abilities able to be cast at the cost of a resource, known as SP. That's the triple bar you'll see at the bottom of your screen when you're in combat. This resource is shared with everybody on your team, which means you'll have to prioritize which characters do and don't get to use their battle skills within combat. While SP does regenerate gradually, there's a few ways to restore it as well. Final strikes, perfect dodging enemy attacks, or using certain abilities such as Akakuri's ultimate will give you SP back. Combo skills are where many of the synergies inside of Arknights Endfield exist. These are skills that are only usable when you fulfill a certain condition. Perlica's, for example, like we mentioned before, is only usable when you cast your final strike. I'll explain more about combo skills once we get into team building, as the two tie into each other very well. Ultimates, just like in any other gacha, exist to sell your husbando or waifu. You gain energy for your ultimate as you do actions such as using your battle skill or combo skills. Then, you hold down the button and that causes them to farm aura. In combat, while you're only able to move a singular character, every character in your team is on the field. I've heard this plays pretty similar to Xenoblade, but I've never played that game. You can swap between your characters by pressing the respective button for that character. This is mainly useful to prevent a character from dying or to swap from a melee character to a ranged character so you can attack while dodging enemy attack patterns. While not controlling the other operators actively, you can still cast their battle skill, combo skill, or ultimates. In that regard, you can think of yourself as orchestrating what actions your teammates will take, all while controlling one main character, and I think that's pretty cool. You'll notice that monsters have a bar under their name. This is their stagger bar. You can damage a stagger bar by using your final strike, battle or combo skill, your ultimate, or art's reactions. When it breaks, the enemy will be immobilized and they'll take additional damage for the duration. It also allows you to cast your finisher, not to be confused with your final strike. It's a highly damaging move, which is also coincidentally cast by using your basic attack. Certain gear or abilities will cause you to do more damage to staggered enemies, so you may end up wanting to save those for when the enemies are staggered. Something to keep in mind. The last system you need to understand about combat going into Enfield's launch are the elements and arts systems. Currently, there are 5 playable elements inside of Enfield. Those are physical, and then the 4 arts: heat, cryo, nature, and electric. Physical is different from the other 4, so I'm going to explain that one first. Physical characters apply and are often centered around the physical status vulnerable. This vulnerable status can stack up to 4 times, and you can see it next to enemies' health bars right here. Vulnerable can be applied through skills, such as battle skills or combo skills like Chen's. Physical characters have 4 ways to apply and interact with vulnerability. Those are Crush, Breach, Lift, and Knockdown. All 4 of these effects will apply vulnerable on the enemy if they don't have it already. If the enemy already has vulnerable, then they all do different effects. For Lift and Knockdown, if an enemy is already vulnerable, they'll apply an additional stack of vulnerable and lift or knock down the enemy respectively. You know, kind of like the name says. Crush and Breach will instead consume those vulnerable stacks. When Crush consumes vulnerable, you'll deal additional damage. When Breach consumes vulnerable, you'll apply physical susceptibility to the enemy, increasing the physical damage that they take for a short amount of time. Both Crush and Breach increase these effects based on the number of vulnerable stacks that the enemy has. That means generally, when playing physical comps, you want to apply as many vulnerable stacks as possible before using these abilities. You can always check out my Pogranичник guide for an in-depth tutorial on how to play physical teams properly. Alright, look, that was a lot of words for a single element, but I promise, now that you understand that, the other ones flow pretty similarly to what physical does. Heat, cryo, nature, and electric all have a similar stacking system to vulnerable, except for the respective elements, known as arts infliction. These can also stack up to 4 times, and are also shown in the same place that vulnerable was. Each time you increase the stack of an enemy afflicted with the same type of arts infliction, the enemy will take some damage, known as Arts Burst. Instead of inflicting the same element art, you also have the option of inflicting a different element art. This will proc something known as an arts reaction. Each reaction is different for each respective element. For example, applying heat to an enemy already inflicted with cryo, nature, or electric procs combustion, which causes the enemy to take damage over time. If you do the same thing but with cryo, you proc solidification, dealing cryo damage and pausing non-elite or boss monsters. If you apply a physical status to an enemy with solidification, you deal massive physical damage. Applying nature to an enemy inflicted with a non-nature art will trigger corrosion, an effect that lowers enemy resistances. Electric applies electrification, which increases the arts damage that enemies receive. Reapplying any of these debuffs will reset the duration of that debuff. Utilizing these elements properly is key to both team building and synergies, which is the perfect segue to teaching you how to actually build a team comp. But you know what would be more perfect? If you subscribe for more gacha content like the Leviathan guide or the 7-day challenges I have on the channel. Many of you play gacha games because you want to play your favorite characters. That means you're going to try throwing a bunch of your favorite characters into a single team and realize they don't work. So, let's teach you how to actually build a team comp properly so you can actually have fun with the combat systems in the game. Really, the biggest thing you need to understand when trying to build a team comp is that combo skills are what matters. Most of the synergies in this game revolve around trying to proc these combo skills. Take Chen for example. Her combo skill is procced when someone else applies a physical status to an enemy, which causes her to apply a physical status as well. That means that she pairs well with other characters who want a physical debuff. Let's look at some sample teammates that would help her out with this then. Arknights gets his combo skill when physical status stacks are consumed, so that works with Chen's physical status generation. Depan and Li Feng both have their combo skills interact with physical status as well. So an example team comp here could be like Arknights, Depan, Li Feng, and Chen. SP generation is another key aspect of this, but in our case, Arknights takes care of that, so we don't actually have to worry about it here. If we want to start replacing characters in the team comp, we have some key elements to think about. If we remove Arknights, we're going to lose our SP generation, which is going to make the team comp flow a lot worse. Chen, in this case, is able to apply physical statuses without using her battle skill, meaning she also saves us SP. Li Feng and Depan are both damage dealers and physical status generators. So, if we want to replace these characters, we'll have to replace them with someone who fits these roles in mind. Let's use another example. Perlica's combo skill procs when someone on your team uses their final strike, as we mentioned before. While it doesn't mean that she can technically pair with any character in the game, her combo skill applies electrification, meaning she wants to pair with other characters who can utilize electrification. Arclight is a character whose combo skill is procced when enemies are inflicted with or consume electrification. That means not only does she have natural synergy with Perlica's combo skill, she also is an SP generator, giving us that role as well. Aviwena, the bunny girl, has her combo skill procced when you do your final strike on an enemy who currently has electrification or electric infliction. She also happens to be a DPS character, so she both pairs with Perlica's combo skill, and she'll be our damage dealer for this comp. Antal has his combo triggered when an enemy with focus, which comes from his battle skill, is inflicted with a arts debuff. That means in our team comp of Perlica, Aviwena, Arclight, and Antal, all our characters' combo skills can chain and link together for nice, smooth gameplay. Side note, this actually happens to be one of the better free-to-play teams if you want to try it. You can adjust which characters you want in your team comp by understanding what their roles are and how their combo skills tie together. Technically, it's slightly more complicated than that, but this is a beginner guide and I can't exactly teach you everything here. Just like any other gacha, Endfield also has a stamina system, and it's pretty important to utilize it. Also, just like any other gacha game, you'll always be lacking it. That's why Endfield ended up naming it Sanity. You can spend your Sanity to farm materials such as EXP materials, character and weapon ascension materials, credits, which are the in-game currency, and skill level up materials. If you played games like Genshin Impact or Wuthering Waves, you'll often find yourself having an abundance of a single type of resource while you're heavily lacking in others. But that's not really the case in Endfield. In Enfield's case, it's pretty much optimal to spend on whatever it is that you're missing out on at that given moment. And I say that having done basically all of the content inside of the beta. So for what you should prioritize if you're low on every resource, here's what I'd recommend. I'd work on character and skill levels first and then worry about weapon levels afterward. Once those are taken care of, essence etches are available to grind. But with that being the main RNG gearing part of the game, I wouldn't worry too much about it in the early game. I'll explain more about essence etches as we get to the gearing section of the guide. Speaking of character upgrade materials, inside the map there are rare materials that spawn over time. These are used to increase your character and weapon levels or your skill levels. You unlock more areas where these spawn as you unlock more regions, but if you plan on building multiple teams, you'll always run out, so put these on cooldown as soon as possible. To get your husbandos and waifus, understanding the gacha system is important. Arknights Endfield system is honestly a little bit more convoluted than it needed to be, so I'll try to make it more understandable. In the game, there's a limited banner with a rate up character, in this case, Levitain. The base chance of you getting the 6-star unit, which is the 5-star equivalent in other games, is 0.8. The chance of you getting a 5-star in this game, aka a 4-star in Genshin and Star Rail, is 8%. In Arknights Endfield, the limited banner works like this. You have an 80 pity and a 120 spark that guarantees the character. Let me talk about the 80 pity first. Within 80 pulls, you are guaranteed to get a 6-star character, no matter where you are on the banner. Once you end up hitting a 6-star character, this will reset no matter where you are in it. So if you're at 7 pulls and you hit it, it'll reset. If you're at 65 and you hit it, it'll reset. Pretty standard stuff. Hitting a 6-star character gives you a 50% chance of getting the rate up unit. Sounds like a pretty standard 50-50 system, right? Actually, no. In Arknights Endfield, you have a rotation of 3 banners. While you can only pull for 1 limited character at a time, the other 2 are still actually on that banner. What that means is, if you fail your 50-50, those 2 units that are not rate up can still be acquired. So in our case, we have Yvonne and Gilberta, which are the pink and the brown-haired lady. These 2 characters get added to the pool of standard banner units we can see here with Ember, Li Fong, Ordelia, and whatnot. That means you have a 2 in 7 chance if you fail your 50-50 to be able to get a limited unit. That means every fail, you can still potentially get a limited unit. This is a huge plus. Now, as they add more standard banner units, this may get diluted, so it may become harder to do that. We'll have to see how they end up managing it. But for now, 2 in 7 is an extremely reasonable chance. Much like other gacha games, there is a soft pity inside of the game, which starts at 65. Each pull gains a 5% increase in drop rate, so the next pull will be like 5.8, then it becomes 10.8, and so on and so forth, until you end up hitting the character. This is the same exact soft pity as Wuthering Waves. One other thing worth mentioning, since it's brought up very often, this 80 pity does carry over between other banners. So if I go from, say, Levitain's banner over to Yvonne's banner, and I only do 7 pulls on Levitain's banner, I'll have a 7 pity on Yvonne's banner for this 80 pity, but not for the 120 spark. Let's explain how the 120 spark works. Actually, I'm going to be honest, the 120 spark is pretty simple. I think the only reason people are getting confused is because they're used to how Wuthering Waves and Genshin Impact end up handling this. It works like this. If you do 120 pulls on the banner, you're guaranteed to get the character. That's it. That is how it works. This pity does not carry over. They've also made it easier for whales to obtain duplicates. I'm making it so every 240 pulls you do on the limited banner, you get an extra duplicate of that character. So this is something good for whales as well. Now, there's one other thing I haven't explained about the gacha. So actually, I'm going to do a pull to showcase it here. Let me go ahead and do a single pull. As we pull this character, you can see right here in the top left, we get bonus rewards. We get 20 of this, the arsenal tokens. Now, when we go to the arsenal exchange over here, we can actually use these tokens to pull on the weapon banner. That's right, you get the weapon currency from pulling on the banner. What this means is you are not spending your premium currency to pull for weapons. This is really important. The weapon banner itself is pretty simple. If you do 8 pulls, each pull being 10 individual weapons, you get a guaranteed limited weapon. At 4 pulls on that banner, you have a 25-75 of hitting the limited weapon. Obviously, a 25-75, not great, but you are guaranteed within 8 pulls. One of the biggest complaints people have about gacha games is the RNG inside of their gearing systems. To be clear, Endfield does have RNG inside of its gearing system, but I do think they handle it well. To understand why, let's explain how the system works first. Characters have a main and secondary attribute. The character's main attribute will be highlighted when you're on that character's page. Each piece of gear has 2 attributes, so ideally, you want the bigger number to be your main attribute and the lower number to be your secondary attribute. Outside of attributes, gear also have some form of buff on there. These include effects such as combo skill damage or ultimate gain efficiency. Obviously, what you want there is going to depend on your specific character's needs. Now, let's talk about sets. You are able to equip 4 pieces of gear in Arknights Endfield. 1 armor, 1 glove, and 2 kits. Set effects only require 3 out of these 4 pieces to actually be part of that set to gain their effect. What that means for you is that you can offset one of these pieces for more ideal stats, which is a nice plus. You're also able to use 2 of the exact same kit on a character and still get that set effect. So if those kits have better stats than you than it does on the armor or glove for that set, that's a nice bonus for you as well. I haven't mentioned it yet, but you obtain gear via crafting it from the factory. Basically, you make these discs, which becomes slightly more difficult to make each time your gear levels up in rarity, and then you turn those in at the gear assembly. In Wuling, the second major city, there are blueprints for gear scattered all across the map, and you'll have to grab those from the open world before you can craft specific pieces for gear. From my experience during the beta though, actually obtaining the gear is pretty easy, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. There was an RNG system for increasing your stats inside of the beta, but we didn't have access to using it during the beta, so I can't actually comment much on that. What I can say though is that all it does is increase the actual stats of the piece of gear that are on there already. So if a piece of gear has will and agility, you'll increase those will and agility stats, but it's RNG whether or not that'll actually happen. Weapons, on the other hand, I can. At their core, weapons function much like they do in other games. You get level up materials to level them up, which gives them bonus stats. As they reach their level caps, you ascend them just like you do characters in this game. Simple stuff. Obtaining duplicates of the weapons allows you to increase their potential, which will give you more of the stats from that weapon. Basically, it's pretty similar to refining inside of Wuthering Waves or Genshin Impact. Weapons themselves have the main RNG aspect of the gearing inside of this game. I mentioned it before, it's called essence etching. I've been told this is a very similar system to what's inside of Monster Hunter, but in a trend you're probably noticing by now, I haven't played that game. Life kinda sucks when you're a gacha degenerate. To get essences, you spend your stamina much like you would for artifacts inside of Genshin Impact. When you obtain them, they have an RNG chance to drop with specific effects. Those effects tie into both the stats and the passives of your weapons. They can be attributes such as will, stats such as attack, or even named effects like Twilight for Surtur's weapon. At yellow rank, these essences will have 3 lines, and your weapons will also have 3 lines. You'll need to obtain an essence that has the same exact 3 lines as your weapon. Well, technically you can equip ones that have less, but the effects that are not already on your weapon won't activate. So your goal is to hit all 3 the same as your weapon. Equipping these essences will increase the level of the stats or passives on your weapon, relative to the level they are on that essence. Increasing the gain from these essences is where the major RNG comes in. Basically, as you farm, you'll get fodder essences, and you want to slam those fodder essences into your main essence, having a chance to actually upgrade them. Thankfully, unlike other games with a similar system like Black Desert Online, these don't actually boom when you fail them. Remember that you can freely remove these essences from your weapons, so you don't have to worry about equipping some just for some temporary stats. Instead of me teaching you step by step how to play the factory, I'm just going to give you tips around the mistakes that I ended up personally making when I was doing factory gameplay. Also, I just highly recommend that you play the tutorial, it's actually pretty good. Most facilities that you craft will need an electric pylon constructed near them in order to be powered. Don't be stupid like I was and wonder why your factory is not working properly when these aren't set down next to your facilities. Speaking of which, as you start expanding your factory, you're going to need more ore production. There are various ore deposits around the map, indicated by this ore icon, and no, you don't want to manually farm them like a psychopath. What you want to do is put mining rigs on the ore deposits so you can passively farm them while you do other tasks. At the beginning of the game, you only have access to the Originium mining rig. The millisecond you get the electric mining rigs, you should dump those Originium mining rigs instantly. Many of you will try to use the Originium mining rigs because they don't require power, but I'm telling you, there's a problem there. They don't ship the materials back to your factory, and instead they stay inside of the rigs, meaning you have to manually lug them back to your factory in order to get the ore. Basically, once you get your factory going, they're borderline useless. What this means is, you'll need to make a Congo line of relay towers leading up to your ore deposits, making sure that those mining rigs are actually powered. Trust me when I say it is definitely worth the hassle. Also, another tip, you can actually use electric pylons to power other electric pylons. So instead of running back to connect it from the relay tower, just use the pylon next to it. This is especially useful for those ore deposits that are just slightly too spaced apart to have a single pylon power everything. The last tip for the factory, as you end up expanding your factory, you'll find yourself running out of power more and more. This is where the thermal banks come in. Not only can you just straight up plug Originium ore into this to gain some extra power, you can actually be even more efficient. The factory allows for you to craft batteries, and if you put batteries inside of these thermal banks, they give you exponentially more power than with the Originium ore. This is really useful when you're trying to optimize space later on because, as we all know, the factory must grow. I have a ton of Enfield content on the channel you should check out. I have my Pogradinichnik guide, my Levitain guide, I have my 100 hours experience playing Arknights Endfield, and I'll be making a ton more on launch. Make sure to subscribe for that, and until next time, take care.